Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Well, I'm going to say it here. Stop blaming others and blame yourself. Take responsibility, and your life will be so much better. We're going to talk about the blame game today and how he can navigate through a lot of that in terms of our relationships, our professional life, all of that. He's somebody that coaches people all the time with lots of different modalities, with OptimaLife practices, and he's back with us. Mike Corral joins us on the program. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Doing great, Steve. How about you? How are you?
I'm good. I'm going to take responsibility right now. I'm going to do it, and here we go.
Right.
I'm being treated for minor skin cancer up here.
Oh,
Been dealing with it for years. Like literally 25. Be gone in like a week and a half. Have fresh baby skin after that. But I'm taking the responsibility because back in the day, all I did was lay in the sun. That's right. And you knew it was bad, but I was like, you know what? I'm 20 something. It's not going to bother me. I'm not going to worry about it. And then, come to find out my mom has it in her history, my dad, my aunt, all that. Got to take responsibility. Can't blame anybody else for that. And that's just one that, health wise, but we do that many times, try to push it off onto somebody else in terms of responsibility. Why do we do that? If we don't want to own it, or we don't want to deal with the mental consequences of taking that responsibility?
well, yeah. Some people actually confuse responsibility for accountability. And accountability is more empowering than actual just the responsibility. Responsibility has to do with being at cause. So when we are at cause, things happen because of what we have done. Things can happen in a good way, or they can happen, in a bad way, or any way in between. The thing is, we don't have to be responsible for everything that we decide to be accountable for. And parents especially, know what this is like. When your kid goes to school, they get in trouble. As the parent, you're accountable. Are you responsible for what they did in school? Not directly, but you take accountability for it and you do what you need to do to rectify the situation. So it's a lot easier for us to take accountability than it is to be responsible, or to acknowledge that we are responsible for something.
Wow. Interesting you say that. Even as a parent, we take that responsibility for our kids. Let's say your kids do something, get in trouble in school. Sometimes we take that on.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when my son was young, he brought home a bunch of chocolates, and he said, "Dad, I got to sell these because we're going on a field trip. And I need to sell these to go on a field trip." I said, "Okay, how much are they?" And he says, "Well, $1.25 or whatever." And I said, "Okay, I wonder how much the company makes them for." And so we started tossing around ideas. Next thing you know, we're going to candy shops, candy warehouses, and buying candy wholesale and then selling them. I said, "Do this along with what you're doing, and you'll come up with the money a lot faster because you'll get to keep a lot more." Well, the idea stuck with him. Next thing you know, he's buying candy from the candy store guy and selling it at school. And the principal calls and says, "Mr. Corral, your son is here because we caught him selling stuff on campus." And I said, I went over and he says, "Your son is quite an entrepreneurial fellow here. He's got all these followers grouping around him at recess time. And actually, we're not allowed to let kids do that on campus." And he kind of chuckled. I was relieved because I thought, well, he could have been selling drugs. He could have been doing a lot of other things. When I took my son aside, I was actually proud of him for using his skills and for thinking outside the box and doing something that was worthwhile and something contributing towards his cause. On the other hand, if we're not aware of the rules, we need to be aware what we're allowed to do, what we're expected to do, and then take it from there. So we took responsibility. We said, okay, we're not going to do it on campus anymore. We decided he's going to go off campus, maybe closer to the house. He did walk home, and do his business that way. So there are ways to be accountable. There are ways to be responsible. And I was responsible as a parent for him getting the idea. I put the idea in his head. In that way, I was at cause. Him actually carrying it out is a whole different story. So
And you both were unaware of the rules, of the school as well.
Right. And we found out what the rules are pretty quick, So it's just one of those things. But when it comes down to blaming somebody for something, what blame is an attempt to avoid accountability. And people do it. I call it the D's, the 7 D's. We have a way to distract people from realizing who's at fault. We try to deflect the responsibility and say, well, yeah, if that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have done that if you didn't do this. Or we diffuse it and just say, well, everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it. So what's the big deal? We also try to deny that we even did it. That's the biggest one. No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was so-and-so. It was so-and-so. The other thing we do is we delay. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that was really what happened, but and we do all these different things ultimately to defend ourselves, to protect ourselves from having to be accountable. But what we don't realize is that accountability is our friend. Accountability is an opportunity for us. It gives us empowerment. It gives us confidence. It gives us resilience. It helps us to establish our authority. And it actually brings us stability too in our lives. When we take account, it's like doing our bookkeeping. How much better do you feel when you've done your books and you can account for everything that came in, everything that goes out, and everybody's taken care of? It gives you a good feeling. You feel stable. You feel empowered. You feel all these great things. And it's just one of those things that we need to realize there's no need to avoid it. As a matter of fact, the more we can take accountability on, the more it empowers us. I remember being in line at the supermarket, and this kid wanted to buy a bunch of things, candies or snacks or whatever, and he was taking out small change, and he was holding up the line actually. And the guy behind him says, you know what, here. And he just paid for all the kids' candies, like $2 or $3. And he helped the line move faster by taking care of that. He could afford to be accountable in that case. And there's so many instances in life where we can actually pick up the tab and say, hey, look, let's move forward with this. Let's move on.
This is so relatable. So relatable. And when you were doing the 7 Ds, I was waiting for one of them. I knew a lot of them, but I was waiting for the deflection because I was in a relationship, long-term relationship, and relationships take two. Mm-hmm. So you have to take accountability for your role, the other person's role. But there was one particular major situation, impactful on many, that I would mention to my ex. And I said, this is what you did. And it's been, proven by others, even healthcare professionals, right? And the deflection would come back. The subject would change. It would never be, I know, and either I'm sorry for that or whatever it might be. It was always the deflection. So when I heard you, there was like the second or third one in there. It's like, a lot of us use the power of the deflection just to take the focus off ourselves. When we don't realize that, like you said, we're actually empowering ourselves, taking the responsibility for it, clearing the air, if you will, with others, and I guess also with yourself.
Right. The sad thing is that anybody who chooses to do any of those deeds is actually choosing to postpone their life, because you're waiting for everybody else to change before you can move forward. Before your situation can get better, you have to wait for everybody who's at fault. You have to wait for everyone you blamed to do their part before you can do what you can do. On the other hand, if you took authority and took accountability for it, you can move on right then and there. Okay, I get what you're saying. This is what I'm going to do about it. As far as I'm concerned, I want to make sure that I am better at this. I'm a better listener. I'll finish what I start. I'll make sure that my words are not harmful. I'll make sure that I mean what I say and I say what I mean. All of these things we can be accountable for. And the blame game will end at that point because there's no one left to blame.
Mike, what do you do in a situation where somebody else did something? They're responsible for something, and you just want them to realize it, but they don't. You just move on. You just leave it at that.
You do have to move on in many cases because what happens is we give our power to that person.
Right.
And we allow those people to kind of wallow in their weakness and their fear and all of these other things. If we really wanted to help them, we would take a different approach, a more empathetic approach, put ourselves in their shoes and realize, well, I used to have to do this with bullies in high school because I was a tiny little guy. I was 4'7" when I started high school. I weighed 63 pounds. I weighed 84 pounds as a senior. So the whole 4 years I was targeted. And like I said, I probably on another podcast, I used to feel sorry for them because then I would realize that they were acting out of fear. They were acting out of, I don't know, like feeling threatened that I was going to, outshine them in some way academically or whatever. And in many cases, I was able to make them my friends because I would offer them the help that they needed. Some of the kids were not the real smart kids that used to be the bullies. And they would steal my homework. They would, do stuff like that until I began to help them. So what are you doing? Well, because I got to pass the test, yada, yada, yada. Well, what if I helped you pass the test? What if you passed the test and you didn't have to steal my homework? So we can often find the solution to empower other people by putting ourselves in their situation and try to notice how it would feel if you were in their position. Maybe they don't have the confidence. Maybe they don't feel competent enough in the relationship or skilled enough to communicate in the way we would like them to.
It's truly a challenge when you're in those situations. I totally relate. When I was in elementary school, junior high, I was the big kid. So I didn't get picked for sports and I got bullied all the time. It's funny though. Just the other day, I was with my daughter who's 15 in the car and I passed by the elementary school I went to. And I said, see that area right over there? See and there's still like some playground equipment there. I said, that's where I got bullied. That's where I got beat up. And I said, that will never happen again. That will never happen again. You don't going to repeat it, but also it's the confidence is so much different now. And then you realize, and like you said, these people do these things for a reason. Sometimes it's hard to have that compassion when, especially when you're in high school and you're down on the ground, they're ready to pound you. But yeah, I totally, and you know what, years later, I was 22, and me and my friends got beat up by a bunch of guys. And I recognized one of them as a high school wrestling champion. Yeah, there's no I couldn't have any compassion for him at that time. But I look back, feel sorry for him. His marriage failed with somebody who through school I'm still connected to. And I had no negative feelings whatsoever. As a matter of fact, his daughter, they had gotten divorced. This is about 3 years ago, maybe 4. My mom passed and she had a really nice TV. I gave that TV to that family.
Oh, wow.
Because I don't know how I knew that they were looking for a TV for the daughter. She was struggling. She's in her 20s. And I don't know how I made the connection, but I did. And one day I came over, opened up the trunk. Here you go. I don't need it. And no ill feelings. I actually feel bad. And it was impactful. I mean, I had a brand new car after my dad passed. Um, you know, they beat up on the car, they beat up on me. Still to the day have a deviated septum, but you know that's an individual that had some challenges, and you just got to walk away from it at some point.
Yeah, it's better to walk away and give yourself enough time to gain a new perspective. It's really tough, and I've noticed even after high school, well into my marriage, I've been into these heated situations where I just could not see the other person's point. I could not, whether it's my daughter or one of my sons or my wife, I am in such turmoil by all these things that are being said that I can't see their perspective. I can't get myself to even think empathetically. So I just have to walk away. Look, I'm not doing this. I'm sorry. I'm not doing this. And I'll ponder the ideas. The ideas will fly back and forth. And then I began to realize, from their perspective, it pretty much looks like, I did this and I did that. And they don't really know why. They don't know what my intentions were. If they were to know what I know, things would be differently. They would probably respond differently. So at a time when I'm calm, when they're calm, they've almost forgotten about the situation, I can come and offer my new perspective. I see what you meant about this and this and this. But I want you to know that, things may change if you realize why I did that or why I continue to do that, why I resist doing that. These are the reasons. And sometimes that's all they need to be able to move on.
And you took responsibility.
Yeah.
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 And sometimes it's like
that very moment.
Right. And there's sometimes there's reason, not excuses. I've learned to try my best to remove emotion, deal with the facts. Facts don't lie. Facts are facts. This is how things transpired. And this is the reason something may have happened, or maybe the reason you or I acted in a certain way. But sometimes people get heated and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear the facts.
That's right.
How about some other thoughts on accountability and taking responsibility?
So when we decide that we are responsible for something, the fear comes in right away, especially if it's a situation that's not a positive situation. The fear comes in, it prompts us to maybe lie or avoid talking about it until we feel that it's safe for us to do that. Oh, you lied about this and this, and you get, well, yeah. The reason why is because I was afraid you would overreact. I was afraid that you wouldn't understand why I did it at the time. And so, yes, I did lie, and I take responsibility for that. If I would have known that you would be kind enough to understand or consider it without judging me first, I probably wouldn't have lied. And so what we're doing at that point is being responsible. We're taking the accountability and we're explaining our perspective. We're allowing people to see what it's like to be us in that situation. And that can help us to, gain the empathy from those that we fear or respect or are intimidating to us.
Is it a learned skill, to have that empathy, that understanding?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It is. We don't often put ourselves in someone else's shoes. In restorative justice, we have a saying that that has to do with what we call walking the purple path. With restorative justice, it's all about restoring justice for what happened, for when someone is harmed. And we can harm people without even realizing it, just by being ourselves in the company of someone who isn't prepared for who we are. And without intention, without understanding, we can hurt people. What walking the purple path means is putting yourself in the position of the perpetrator. What if I was guilty? How would I feel if I actually did hurt this person by being smug or by being arrogant or by flaunting what I have or showing off or whatever? If I did that, I am so sorry. this is a private conversation in the privacy of your heart, in the privacy of your mind, because nobody else is judging at you and no one else is going to be throwing stones. You are looking at yourself, you know, in the complete truth. Yeah, what if I hurt somebody? How would I feel if I knew I did them some harm and caused them to make decisions otherwise that are going to affect them the rest of their life? And we don't realize there's a ripple effect to everything that we do. Maybe we didn't think of ourselves as you know, deliberately trying to harm them, but we did. And it's not an easy thing to do. When we are able to walk the purple path and feel what it feels like to be a perpetrator, a host of emotions just take place and they take over and they affect our decisions moving forward. I used to work with criminals for 35 years. I was a probation officer and I worked in institutions for juvenile felons. There were juveniles that were maybe they're older juveniles, you know, under 18, closer to 18 years old, that were sex offenders. And some of them were going to prison for child molestation. And the conversations I had with them was like, I don't deserve to be alive anymore. If they could castrate me, I would totally opt for that. And things like that, where you can feel the guilt, the shame, and you can feel the contriteness in their heart. They don't want to be the way they are. And for those people, you have to wonder, what is the solution? And what are they going to do? Would they be justified in taking a surgery, or, you know, would they be justified in living in an institution all of their life? You know, because then the whole world has to know. Oh yeah, there's a sex offender on my block. There's a website for it.
Sure.
So, I mean, and that's an extreme case, but you know, there are so many other cases where we could actually put ourselves in their shoes and play it out, role play it out, so that we can gain empathy for them.
In your role in those years as a probation officer, would you say the majority of those that were charged with a crime and convicted, would you say the majority of them took responsibility?
Well, some of them were forced, and then there was a good number of them that would do it again.
Really?
Yeah, and you know, every case is different, and it's difficult because we have a tendency, we feel like generalizing and making it as, you know, making blanket policies for everyone. But I was doing counseling for first offenders at one point in my career, and one of the questions in my list, my intake, was, if you were in the same situation, would you do this again, this crime again? This one was for petty theft. The lady said, absolutely, I would do it again, because I stole food from the grocery store to feed my kids when my husband left me. My third son was born hydrocephalic, and I had medical bills that just ruined our accounts. And so, yes, I would do it again because it fed my kids for as long as, you know, and she was taking responsibility because she had to go to counseling. She had to see me, and, you know, she worked her way into a cleaning offices and just picked herself up from having nothing to actually creating an income and renting a house, an apartment for her kids and herself. And then her husband comes back, you know, oh, the situation's gone. You know, I'm sorry, you're not coming back. This is what I did for myself.
Well, you're right. You're right in what you said, that you're right in everything. But what you just said regarding every case is different. You know,
Yeah.
I had the visual of you know, a violent crime or whatever. I'm not saying what she did was right, but what would you do in that situation where you're down to the point where your kids are starving,
Yeah.
nobody's offering assistance? What are you going to do?
Well, the neighbors had extension cords going to her house. They said, we'll give you electricity, we can bring you water, we can bring you food. But you know, it's not enough. There's, you know, you have to reach a point where you get into your head, your mind, your heart, and you just reinvent yourself to get out of a situation like that.
Great talk today, and so relatable in terms of what we deal with all the time. We wrestle with, and we deal with others in terms of that accountability and responsibility. Mike, how do we connect with you if somebody is challenged, wants to find some counseling, maybe find some answers? How do we locate you online?
You can go to OptimaLifePractices.com, or you can call me at 855-548-8118 and leave a message. And I'll get back to you as soon as possible. We'll talk about a free session so that you can get a feel for what we do and what's relevant to you and what you're going through.
Excellent. And thanks for your transparency. I had no idea that, 3.5 decades as a probation officer, just part of your life, definitely offers a lot of perspective in looking at others and understanding. So I appreciate all of it. Thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve, for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.